Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier, with a second presentation looking at what was a very messy birth for Weimar Germany. This time turning our attention to the German Revolution. With tentative negotiations for an armistice underway, and the Entente powers continuing their advance along the Western Front, on October the 30th, German sailors in the Grand Fleet anchored off Wilhelmshaven at Kiel mutinied, having been ordered to sail and engage the British Navy in what Admiral Scheer saw as a last opportunity for an honourable battle. The seamen, however, saw it differently. A futile mission, a suicide mission, the war already having been lost, and one in which it would be their lives that would be sacrificed. And so they mutinied. And what came to be known as the German Revolution rapidly spread as a wave of strikes and military rebellions quickly spread across Germany, engulfing all the major cities. It was a genuine nationwide revolution, and soldiers were everywhere to the fore. Councils were elected by workers and servicemen in major cities all over the country. Hamburg, Cologne, Frankfurt, Leipzig, Munich and Berlin are just examples. The councils were not particularly revolutionary. Some were controlled by Spartacists, but most had a majority of Social Democrats. But this was nevertheless a revolution from below. The people wanted a voice, and the councils gave them one. To the people concerned, they were democracy in action. To others, they were Bolshevism. And though there were local complaints to address, there were also demands for an end to the war, for the Kaiser to go, and for a truly democratic government. Strikes led to demonstrations on the streets. Some amongst the middle class formed their own paramilitary groups to protect their property and businesses. It was absolute chaos, and this was the Germany that soldiers were returning to. A majority in the Reichstag wanted the Kaiser to abdicate in favour of one of his young sons, though not the Crown Prince, who, like the Kaiser, was too closely associated with the war. Germany would be ruled by a council of regency, but Wilhelm, backed by both General Groener, who had replaced Ludendorff, and Hindenburg, refused to abdicate. The calls on the streets for him to do so were taken up by the communists, and on November the 6th, the leader of the Social Democrats, Friedrich Ebert, reluctantly, because he wanted to preserve the monarchy, but publicly called for him to abdicate. On the same day, General Groener warned the Kaiser personally and Prince Max by telegram that an armistice had to be signed without delay. The following day, the German armistice delegation crossed into the French lines to begin the negotiations. With the Kaiser refusing to abdicate, the SPD members of the Reichstag resigned en bloc and called for a nationwide general strike. A Bavarian Soviet Republic was declared in Munich, and revolutionary sailors seized temporary control of the city. Still, the Kaiser wouldn't abdicate. On November the 8th, Prince Max telephoned him, telling him that your abdication has become necessary to save Germany from civil war, adding that the great majority of the people believe you to be responsible for the present situation. The belief is false, but there it is. But Wilhelm was still having none of it. The next day, November the 9th, Hindenburg and Groner went to see Wilhelm to press for his abdication. Hindenburg broke down, and it was Groner who told Wilhelm that the army was collapsing, as was order at home. The Kaiser asked Groner if the army might be used to restore order, but the answer he received was a firm no. Not only were German cities out of control, but the army itself couldn't be relied on. It no longer stands behind your majesty, Groner told him. Hindenburg supported Groner's view, as did all but one of the 24 senior officers summoned to the Kaiser to give their view. Prince Max, in an effort to preserve the monarchy, took it on himself to announce the Kaiser's abdication in place of a regency. The Kaiser finally accepted his fate, indeed a fait accompli, and went into exile in Holland. There was a final indignity inflicted on him, however, when, warned that German soldiers at Liege might be mutinous, he was obliged to leave his train and continue his journey by car, using back roads to avoid being stopped. He formally abdicated both thrones, the Prussian as well as the German, on November the 28th, but by then it was only a formality. And so that was the German Revolution, and it was indeed a revolution, in that its sailors had mutinied, soldiers had deserted, councils had been set up all over Germany by workers and servicemen, and the Kaiser had been forced to abdicate. And it was a really messy birth for Weimar. A republic would soon be declared, and in the eyes of the elite, and in the bad times ahead in the eyes of many other Germans too, Weimar would be associated with defeat, with the German Revolution, and would be blamed for all of Germany's problems. I do hope that was useful for you, and I do thank you for listening. Sign up for my channel if you're finding my presentations useful, and spread the word to your friends. Make me feel wanted. Cheers.